Welcome back to John Velvet's Shed. In this episode, I open up a couple of gifts that I got and put in that return line to the fuel tank from the fuel pressure regulator using some hard lines and some flaring tools and stuff. And apart from that, I finished clocking the turbocharger and I make up a new bracket for the wastegate actuator so that I can control the boost. Plenty to do. Let's get into it. It's the first time using a new camera too, so it may take a little bit of time to try and figure out how to get it to work just perfectly. But I've got myself a new welder, and I'm going to open that up and show you what it looks like. It's a Renegade 200 amp AC DC TIG welder. So I can get rid of all the other stuff that I was TIGging with before because it was lift arc, and I honestly caused so much contamination just trying to lift it every time. I'd end up with bits of the tungsten in there. This is a high frequency start, also AC, so I can do alley, which is awesome because I need it for the intercooler piping and even some mounts and stuff like that, and also the little air box. Trade Tools was nice enough to chuck in this argon regulator, which is what I needed anyways because argon's the gas that we use for TIG. Obviously going to need alley filler wire. I've got all the other filler wires that one would usually use. And this beast, which is a foot pedal. Okay, so it's to control the amperage as you sort of start your arc and finish your arc and moving along depending on how long your beads are and stuff like that. Obviously you heat soak the metal, so don't know how I'm going to go doing it, but we'll see. Once the new tools had their home in the shed, I mounted the Raceworks inline fuel pump rated to 250 litres per hour at 5 bar. I used nutserts to fix the mount to the underside of the rear footwell. I was able to use the existing fuel hard lines with little modification. Once removed from the car, I was able to cut the tube and flare the ends, which allowed the use of rubber hose to create the linkages between the hard lines and the AN fittings used on the inlet and outlet of the pump. Alright, I just wanted to show you something I've had to do with mounting the turbo in a new spot and clocking the compressor housing, so not having it where it was originally intended by Subaru when they made it. I've just had to be careful of this wastegate here. So essentially this is from another turbo that I've sort of got, and this is the exhaust or the hot side of it. The exhaust pumps through there, goes through this housing that's in there, spins the wheel that's inside of it, and if that was just to endlessly happen, the RPM and the pressure that the turbo makes would be completely dependent on just the flow of or the revs and how much exhaust is being created. So in order to control it, this isn't me, I haven't done anything like this, but the manufacturer adds this wastegate in. It's a bypass, if you will, so a bypass of exhaust that doesn't go past the wheel, so it doesn't spin it. And the way that's controlled is with something called a wastegate actuator. And this is a Subaru TD04L, which is the same as what I'm using, which is the same as that and same as everything else. And this is what the actuator looks like. So there's like a plunge in there that comes off your boost or manifold pressure. And so when you start to, I think for these are about sort of 7 or 8 psi. When you start reaching that, the plunger moves in that direction, and what that does is push against this and open that up. So that's how it sort of like auto maintains that kind of pressure. I decided that instead of sitting my turbo like that up against the or in the engine bay, which is how it would have done in a WRX,
I'm just clocking it down for more space. So in the previous video, I showed you that I took off that locator pin that was in there. And the other problem is, this is intended to sit like so. And if I rotate this, I'm therefore rotating what would attach to this part and rendering it useless. So I've had to make another bracket, which I've done here. So I've just painted this, and I just made this out of like 3mm thick steel, and just, I really roughed it in and then just supported it with a bit of extra bar, because what I don't want, this is still going to attach on the original points, which is those two up at the top that you can see, those two holes. It will line up like so. I don't want the bracket to move, because what I need is like a really rigid bracket to push against this little area to make sure that there's no exhaust bypassing. So anyways, that looks pretty neat, and I'm a big fan. It just needs attaching up to that spot, which shouldn't be too hard. So there it is, all hooked up. It's just on there loosely, but you can see it's still attaching to the sort of arm there of the wastegate, and it's still pulling it shut, which is what's important. And it looks pretty neat if you ask me. The whole idea behind sort of trying to do this was trying to make it look as stock as possible, and also sort of get a bonnet clearance and being able to get that wastegate to work. You can always change those external wastegates, or at least the plunger type system, which is, yeah, easy to do, but I don't think this engine's going to handle it. This is the alternator that I've just added on as well. It's got a bracket here that allows for a second fan as well. Like, it's just a bracket from one of the older models that didn't have this electric fan that's in there. They had a belt-driven fan. Now, what I've done is take the wheel off just so I can get to where the breather tubes are for the tank, because I've run the fuel return line the whole way back, and I'll show you what it looks like in a second. It was just bad to film, boring, and just a difficult job, but I'll show you in a second. Alright, so that's the end of where it's sort of coming out. These here are the breather tubes that I've got, multiple different ones, all do sort of different things. Some go to the charcoal box up the front, and this one here is just to sort of relieve the pressure inside the fuel tank when you fill it up. And that's probably the thickness that I want, just to accept everything back into the tank. It's not baffled, it doesn't have like a one-way valve in it or anything like that. So I'm just thinking that's probably going to be the best one to use. As promised, I'll show you the return line that I've run. It's just come down the side here, and you can sort of see it go off down there, and it heads down the tunnel. So connection wise, I'm going to use just normal pipe. So I just need to flare the end of that so that I've got, you know, sort of a bevel that it doesn't want to blow off under pressure, even though this one shouldn't have any pressure on it to do it. Better safe than sorry. Just picking the relevant size, 3/18, I think it is. 3/8 rather. Oh, sorry about that lighting. Let's go from here. But just beautifully bubbled end. Alright, so you can sort of see I've just put a T-piece in there. And attached that hose up. So we'll see how that goes. If I have any problems, I'll just have to take this wheel off and take the guard off and have a go again. It has the opportunity to add another, I have got myself a very white face.